So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the holy cities of the Hamashiach laid waste from many centuries. From Yeshayahu the prophet, it's always important pointing the understanding of the Mashiach, because not only the Mashiach or then the Eternal came a long time ago and organized the holy instructions. So then the Torah and also the prophets were very much involved with many kinds of modifications, and also the holy nation for nearly 450 years during the time of the Second Temple period. Unfortunately, they did not have the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies, and then they could not perform the services properly. Now then, as far as these days, where then we are waiting for the temple to be rebuilt, we find then the world going through many kinds of transitions, because the 1,000 years of deceit, or the 1,000 years without the holy temple, neither the direction of his people, find this situation extremely important, because while this period without the temple and without the help from the people, the understanding becomes much more detailed. Now then, the holy instructions in Daniel, the 11th chapter, gives us a few clues as far as the kingdom of the east, the kingdom of the north, and the kingdom of the south. Obviously, the economy of the world also going through many kinds of modifications and transitions. Then, obviously, the system related with the virtual money is playing a vital role of changing then what's going on around the world. Now, during the time of the financial crisis in 2008, we find then a generation of new kinds of monetary systems were then imperative for this period of time. Now then, many nations are trying to come up with ideas on how they can come out of this world's crisis as far as after 2008, because not only the kingdom of China is becoming stronger every year, we find then the flexible network obviously is being neglected for many years. As far as the holy instructions is concerned, we find in the Torah, we find in the prophets, and also Revelation or Galah. And Revelation is a portion of the scripture mostly related with the prophets, where then the events, each of them taking place in its own time. Now, what is then most importantly when understanding the economy, the tabernacle, and then the military regarding then the time of the end? Not very many people understand the importance of the end of time regarding then the holy tabernacle being constructed, rebuilt, and also the influence of the economy and also the military forces that's going to have a very important and vital position during the time of the end. Now then, as far as the revelation, there is a portion of the scripture where then Yohanan saw many kinds of visions that the prophets before him already saw them. For instance, when the Hamashiach, or then the first coming for the organizing and cleaning up of the holy instructions, we find that this person was very able as far as explaining the scripture, and also his people, after his departure, they became the very people where then these prophecies were then kept. Now Daniel the prophet was explaining very interestingly portions of the scripture where then the first structure of these prophecies in a literal sense already have taken place. But since the scripture is so wisely recorded, the reflective prophecies must then have a special enlightenment so then we can understand what's going on in the future. Now then, the kingdom of the north, as we understand during this period of time, as the kingdom of the east is China, there is a very important point regarding then the Soviet Union having a very powerful military, where then later on Daniel explains that the kingdom of the north shall come with a great army and much equipment. Now then, since the scripture is so wisely recorded as far as the prophecies are concerned, let's then take a glance as far as where these particular kingdoms and their actions must play together in understanding how the flow is going to play until forms revelation. Daniel and Revelation are very much united, and not only they are united as far as the words, but also the spiritual understanding of these holy prophecies. Yohanan did not have a special type of vision because the prophets before him had the entire vision. Simply was a reminder or a refresher, so he was then aware of what was coming in the future. Now a portion of revelation has already taken place with the destruction of Rome. A great section of the revelation is already gone because it's already completed. Now then, as far as the reflective, each of these particular sections, such as Daniel, the 11th chapter, and also Revelation, most principally, both of these linked up with Yeshayahu, the chapters 65th, also the 61st, a portion of it, Zechariah, very importantly, the 5th chapter of Zechariah. So we find also these particular prophecies linked up together in order for these then to flow and come to the time of the end. Daniel obviously was the minister of finances during his service under many kings. Now Daniel was a very prayerful person. We find then, as per the instructions and also the prophets, that this particular prophet linking up with Yirmiyahu was very aware of the 70 years captivity in Babylon. Now then, as far as the military forces, we find in the Kingdom of the North, or then the Soviet Union, becoming much more influential in the entire world. Now we find then these much equipment, with a great army and much equipment. For these understanding to become more clearer, we then must understand that the military forces of the Soviet Union, they are going to win the race because of pricing. They are already having many kinds of deals around the world. They are a great nation as far as military equipment. And the time is coming for a second transition after the Chinese system is then in its entirety revealed. Now then, many years ago I had said many times the Chinese system is coming, the Chinese system is coming, and then the Chinese system is coming. And because the system has already come, and the economy of China is very strong, and the Chinese system is very flexible as far as dealing with many kinds of systems, being centralized or decentralized, we find then very important explaining these sections, because the entire world system is going to get linked up with the Chinese. Now, why it's so important, phrasing the Kingdom of the North, the great army, much later, and then the Kingdom of the East, the economy, and then the Kingdom of the South, where then tabernacling once again must take place. This is the most intriguing portion of it, because the scripture is very clear as far as then later on these group of people reminding themselves of the importance of tabernacling. The Holy Land unfortunately is going through lots of changes, some of them for the best, some of them not. And because of these many changes, we find then later that the system where the world is involved with is becoming weaker and weaker. Then why it's so important rephrasing the understanding of the West system and Eastern system, and why it's so important then making sure people understand that the system of the East is growing and the West is weakening. Now later on there is a shift of the economy where then the former system becomes stronger. Now there is a very strong reason, because it's linked with the system of the Kingdom of the South. These many dynamics must then each by each being explained, and also must have point by point in the world today and in the news and also in history, so then Daniel and Revelation can start giving us a few clues as far as what the Hamashiach was explaining many centuries ago. Next time I'm going to evaluate this more from the understanding of the economy. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.